Welcome everyone to episode 7 of Electronic Talks podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He's been releasing music for over 2 decades under many monikers such as TM404 and also Mokira and many others such as Rechord, for instance. And our guest today is Andreas Tilliander. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I guess I'm okay. I'm in a period where I don't sleep too much. So tonight I've had about 3 hours of sleep or so. Okay. So if I'm a little bit lazy, you have to wake me up a little bit. So
no worries about that. Wow, so insomnia.
Yeah, I have those periods like maybe once every month. It lasts for about a week and I'm always in the studio like 5 in the morning and I stay there till 8 in the evening. So I do get a lot of work, but I'm feeling like shit.
Yeah.
But then after a week or so, I'm back in my normal routine. So yeah.
Is it true that you used to have a mattress in the studio sometimes?
I still do, actually. Yeah. I still do.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. And how's your productivity feeling these days?
My what?
Your productivity.
I mean, yeah, I guess every one of your guests has already mentioned the pandemic that we're still in, but it's about a year now, right?
Yeah.
And at New Year's Eve, I was actually doing a document for myself to see what I've been doing during the pandemic year.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be about 5 albums or something like that.
That's amazing.
I haven't actually released anything like for quite a while, but there's a lot of music to come. So I guess my productivity has been quite all right. I mean, usually in a normal year, I tend to have like, I don't know, a gig every weekend or every other weekend or so.
Yeah.
Which means I usually make music for that particular gig.
Exactly.
Maybe I played somewhere the prior week or and then the next week when I'm back in the studio, I'm like, okay, I didn't like that part, those hi-hats in those 10 minutes during that particular set. It was really shitty, and I work for the next weekend, so I only plan music for live gigs.
Yes,
usually. But now, since there's no live gigs at all, I can do whatever I feel like. I go to the studio, I'm there for a week, and I'm only making like drony music that nobody will ever get to hear. Yeah. And then the next week, I might have a deadline, and I'm actually doing like, finishing tracks or whatever. But I'm constantly working despite having no real goals at the moment. So.
That's nice, very nice to hear.
Yeah.
And speaking of live, we could get a little bit into your concept of TM404.
Yeah.
And just to explain a little bit to the audience, I mean, you're about to release the 3rd record.
Oh, yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about the conception of TM404?
Yeah. I think I actually started it about 10 years ago. Starting doing the recordings. The concept is, or at least in the very beginning, I was 100% purist or whatever. I was making music with only TB303s and TR606s and 808s and 909s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which means that's the early 80s Roland drum machines and synthesizers. Yeah. And especially the TB303.
Exactly.
That one is, it's supposed to be for bass only. Maybe if you have a synthesizer or a Hammond organ or whatever, and you want to have some bass playing along with your chords or your melodies or whatever, you would buy a TB303.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple machine, but every time I turn it on, I get like goosebumps still after having it for about 20 years or so. And for a while, I was touring quite a bit. I don't know, 15 years ago. So I needed to have an extra setup because I had one that I always brought in my tour cases.
Yes.
So I bought an extra one, and then I bought a third one. And after a while, I had 4.
Yes.
And my friends started saying like, "Hey, come on, sell me one of yours. You don't need 4 of them."
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, I'm not using 4 of them. Maybe I should.
Yeah.
So I started doing like, YouTube sessions, having 3 or 4 cameras, doing like just live sets with 303s and 606s.
Yeah.
And I had no plans whatsoever to like, make a career or even a record or a live set with that setup. It was only for like, my own amusement and only for, obviously, since I uploaded it, I wanted to share it somehow. But I mean, translating those recordings into live sets was nothing that I planned at all. After having those tracks up, I think I had about 3 or 4 tracks up online for about 2 years, and nobody even cared about it. And for some reason, within the same month, I had about, 4 labels who contacted me and wanted me to release those recordings.
Okay.
And I thought for a while, and then I decided to release it on Kontra-Musik, which is a Swedish label from Malmö, where I've already put out a few records. So I went with Kontra-Musik, and let's see, this is January 2013, so 8 years ago now, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
And again, I mean, I had the recordings, so I just gave it to Ulf, who runs Kontra-Musik, and okay, release whatever you feel like. I gave him about 15 tracks, and I think 8 of them made it to the vinyl.
Yes.
And then
the vinyl we have.
Right
here.
This is the first one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the same month, I got contacted by the CTM festival in Berlin, and they wanted me to do my very first TM404 set at the Berghain.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, fuck. How can I translate all those tracks? Because, I mean, when I did the sessions, I made it, again, for my own amusement. And so I never even saved the patterns or whatever. I just recorded it. Okay, next one. Recorded that one, next one.
Yeah.
So I had no way to actually perform it. So I was working for quite a while, and I think it turned out all right. Made like, 35, 40 minutes session with 3 303s and 1 606 and a lot of delays or whatever. So, yeah, long story, but that's the start of TM404.
Exactly. And the origin of the name was because of the...
Yeah, it's a really, really bad joke. I've been part of a synthesizer fetishist mailing list since many, many years. And I don't know, 20 years ago, there was this guy who... we were joking about the name of the TB303.
Yeah.
Because the TB stands for transistor base. It's really, really, really geeky, though. And... the Roland series from the 80s, they have everything from 101 to 909, apart from 404, because 4 in Japanese means chi, and chi is also the word for death.
Yes.
So they were superstitious at the time. And so they made a 101, which was a synthesizer, 202 synthesizer, and then 505 to 909 is drum machines.
Yeah.
And... SH101 is synthesizer 101. MC202 is microcomposer 202. Transistor bass 303. And then the rest, all the drum machines are transistor rhythm 505 to 909. So this guy at the mailing list, he said, okay, so what would the 404 be? Would it be a synthesizer? Would it be like a drum machine or whatever? And somebody else it has to be the transistor marimba. So it's really like it's just a joke.
Yes.
But somehow I liked it and I went for it. And afterwards, I've had I've read reviews or whatever where people assume that it's TM as in Tilliander and Mokira. Like Mokira, one of my monikers, and Tilliander, So it makes sense, but it was nothing that I planned. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So you started in the kind of live sense, doing sessions and whatnot, and it turned into the album, and it turned into live shows.
Yeah.
And then in the live shows and ahead of the second album, it kind of you found this kind of progression of the sound. Am I right?
Yeah.
So could maybe going in a more dance friendly direction?
Oh yeah.
That what happened?
Yeah, for sure. Like when I started the project, it would be so easy to make 125 BPM techno with a 909 and a 303.
Yeah.
Which is something that I really enjoy, both listening to and make myself. But the idea with the TM404 product was to do something else, like slow down and just, you might not hear it, but this is actually a 303 that is sounding right now. Lots of processes, like, lots of pitch shifters or delays or whatever. So after a while, when I put out the album, there's no techno music on the album.
Yes, exactly.
I guess the fastest track is about 105 BPMs or something like that. But since my debut was at Berghain, I got booked to play a lot of, dance music clubs. At least for the following 6 months or so, I would travel somewhere, Milano, Rome, or I don't know, UK, Manchester. People would say, we saw you at Berghain and we really wanted to book you.
Yeah.
But most of the people booked me for techno clubs.
Exactly.
And the set at Berghain was not really techno, maybe a little bit. But so for the next album, I was like, okay, maybe it's a good mixture to have a little bit more of my more like, techno productions in it as well. So I did prepare a lot of more stuff that I actually prepared for playing live. Yeah, ended up being on the second album. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And now in February, you are releasing finally the third album.
Oh, yeah.
And we have an image of it back here on the shirt.
Yeah.
And it's called SYRA.
Oh, yeah.
Which in Swedish could be translated as acid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in the press release for the record, you also mentioned, or it's mentioned that it's kind of a diary of some sorts.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that, the concept for the album?
Yeah, the concept is I was invited by Konstnärsnämnden, which is a Swedish cultural, how do you say, council? Like they gave me an artist in residence in Berlin for a month, which meant that I could, be in Berlin for a month and just do whatever I feel like. They said, maybe you wouldn't want to, have a lot of meetings or whatever.
Yes.
I brought my 303s and a 606 and a few other instruments and effect pedals. And I would stay in Kreuzberg, waking up early in the mornings and just, making music. I think I went to 2 clubs during my month. I went to bed after 12 o'clock, after midnight, about 2 or 3 times. I would only be, probably the most boring Berlin visit. Not from my perspective, but, Berlin is like a party city or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would sit there with my 303s and just make music, and it ended up being that album. Or again, I made a lot of music, but
Yeah.
Ulf selected what ended up being the album.
Yes.
The diary parts, I guess, since I didn't make music for a live show, I would be, some early morning, you're a bit tired, or again, maybe insomnia, and
Yes.
2 hours of sleep, and your head is really like, oh, fuck. Which usually for me, I'm not really into making like 130 BPM techno if my head is, dizzy. So a lot of the music is super slow again, back to the first album.
Yes.
And I think it might be, I mean, I've only made 3 albums with the TM404 project, but I've made several hours of music.
Yes.
And I think this is probably my favorite 1 hour of music that I made with the TM4 project.
I was amazed when listening to this, because I was listening to it with my eyes closed and just trying to imagine things. And it also, you made the machine sound so organic.
Yeah.
Everything sounds so natural, and it sounds, it's really, several songs that creates landscapes in your head. And it's just so amazing that you can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, did you use samples and stuff as well, or was it mostly the hardware equipment? Or
there's no samples. I would say 90% is the 303s or the 202, apart from the drums, which is the 808 and 606. I did, however, use some chords. There's this Swedish company called Softube. They made a synthesizer called Parallels.
Yeah.
And in my studio, I have quite a lot of synthesizers. But in the Berlin apartments where I was for this month, I couldn't bring that much instruments. So I ended up actually using the Parallels for all the like pads, whatever.
Right.
And there's one track which is quite funny. What's the name again? I think it's called Vactro or something like that.
One of the faster tracks.
I think it's maybe 145 BPMs or something like that, which is quite a funny story because I'm always making music. I'm always in the studio. A lot of times it doesn't end up being actual tracks. And sometimes I'm quite busy at Instagram. So I'm like, okay, this is not really a track, but it's good enough for 1 minute on Instagram. So I film, okay, here's this synthesizer playing and whatnot. And for some reason, I went back to my Instagram accounts and I found a track, the Vactro beats, whatever, which I recorded, I don't know, 4 years ago, something like that, in my Årsta studio, which you paid me a visit some years ago. And I found this, it was only a Buchla beat playing like 5-step sequencer, which I at the time thought, okay, this is good enough for Instagram, but I won't do anything else with it. And listening back, I was like, hey, this is quite nice, but I didn't keep it at all, apart from microphone, mobile microphone, filming, whatever. So I connected my iPhone to my mixer in Berlin and recorded it. And then I made a track with the 303s with the iPhone playing at in the background. And I was looping it. So I guess on the album, what you hear is the 303s, the 202, and the drum machines, the parallels for the chords, and one track from the Buchla. I guess that's it. Yeah.
But that's amazing. It's like when you really just leave yourself to the music, sometimes I even heard it sounded like bird sounds to me, or other kinds of natural sounds. It's just,
I think there might be some birds in there actually, because there's one track which is called Rooftop, without the T, Rooftop, because I was lucky enough to be in this Kreuzberg flat, and I found out after 2 weeks or so that there was actually a rooftop. This was in November, but I would spend some time there making music as well, and like sitting there with laptops listening to what you did the prior nights, and you're like, hey, the birds. Oh no, let's record it. So
Okay.
It's a cliche, but
no, but it was lovely, I think, because it felt like in the entrance of the record you were in some kind of dark mine or something on dramatic, and then it kind of opens up and goes into something else. So I really love that kind of ambience.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah.
And it's also that you have some tracks, other track names just to mention, like Oxford, for an instance. Is that a special place to you?
Or that's actually, I guess I was lying to you, because there's one more track that has something else than the 303s. In the Oxford track, there's, I guess it's also 5-step sequence playing some sort of drummy percussion, which I made on Innovation Peak, which is quite new. I guess it's some sort of hybrid analog digital synthesizer. And the filter on that one is called Oxford. So
I see.
When the Kontra-Musik label called me like, hey Andreas, we need the titles tonight, I was like, okay, because I never come up with titles before it's, we have to send it to the press, to the record factory. So I was like, okay, and I was listening to my own tracks and like, oh, this is the Oxford filter playing. Okay, that's the title of that track. And actually, it's this record. The Buchla track that I mentioned as well, that track is called Vactro because the filter in the Buchla, it's low pass gates, for the nerds out there, is it's Vactrols playing. So
I see.
Yeah, it's super geeky. And I guess there's one track called 1998 because it sounds very much like Plastic Man, and he put out 2 records in 1998 that really, really changed my life. And there's the last track is called Ulf Eriksson, which is the label owner of Kontra-Musik and one of my very, very best friends as well. So I've been dedicating songs to him before, but this one was the first one that was really like, okay, Ulf Eriksson.
I really thought about that. How did you guys meet in the beginning?
It's a quite funny story. It was early 2000s, about 20 years ago. He booked me to play a rave at the by the bridge over to Denmark, and I played somewhere else in Malmö during that night, and I got super, super, super tired. So when it was my turn to play, I wasn't really in the mood, or I was super tired, quite drunk as well. At the time, I was in a project called Bulgur Brothers, which was Mika Stavestrand, Johan Skugge, and me. So when it was our turn, I was like, sorry guys, I'm too tired. I'm just gonna be in this sofa backstage here. You play. So they played as Bulgur Brothers. Every now and then I would wake up in the sofa and be like, this sounds really, really good. I hope it's still us who's playing. Or whatever. And Ulf, that was the first time I met Ulf, and he got really pissed off at me because, hey, you're supposed to play. And I was like, yeah, but I'm too tired. So for several years, he wouldn't speak to me. He would be like, oh, no, man, you fucked up. Yeah, I did. And then I don't know how it's changed, but it really did. I mean, again, we're closest friends now. So, and we've been touring a lot together, and I think Ulf has put out about 60, 70 records or something like that on his label, and probably 20 is by me. So we're super connected. And he's been telling me stories about, he's been playing 4-hour live DJ set in Bali with only my music or whatever. So I guess the respect and the love is mutual.
Yes, it definitely seems so.
20 years later, now we're actually friends.
You're okay now.
Yeah. It took some time though.
Excellent. That's a very nice legacy you have together in some ways.
Yeah.
And what's your hope for SYRA? It's releasing on which date exactly?
It's been delayed almost 4 months because of the pandemic and pressing plans had some problems. I hope. I mean, obviously there won't be any gigs.
That's true.
But so I guess people will enjoy listening to it at home. And even though there's 2-3 techno tracks or whatever, most of it is slower. So
it's great for home listening.
Yeah,
I think it works very well for that.
Yeah,
so,
headphones. If you're out running or whatever you're doing. So I don't have any plans for it. Hopefully, maybe in October or something, you can start playing live again.
Exactly.
So I have quite a lot of time to do the transition from my studio to doing live sets with that record. So it should be okay, I guess.
And how can people find this record if they want to pre-order it now?
There's this Kontra-Musik Bandcamp.
Yes.
And then the distributor is Clone. So clone.nl and Hardwax in Berlin always gets them as well. And I know that Micke at Fade at Skånegatan always has my records as well. So I think we pressed 300 copies and 100 of them were sold through the Kontra-Musik Bandcamp.
Yes.
So we're actually, I'm meeting Ulf tomorrow and we're actually gonna send out 100 records. But the other 200 will be, at various digital, like Hardwax or Clone or
so scattered.
Cats. Yeah, exactly. And it will be released on Spotify or Apple and stuff like that as well. So.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes. And could you tell us a little bit about the other projects you've been working on last year? You have one project with one of the members from Kite. Am I right?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's also quite a kind of ambient style project, but a little bit different.
We've known each other since, again, the early 2000s or something. And we've always been speaking about making music. At the time, he was in a lot of indie bands like Yvonne and Strip Music and stuff like that. And I mean, I guess Kite is some sort of an indie band as well. But we have a lot of mutual, musical favorites like Spaceman 3 or Sun and a lot of stuff that we both enjoy. So we've always been speaking about, hey, we have to make music together. And we never did. And then Kitte is his name, Christian.
Yes.
He got an artist in residence in Shanghai for 6 months. And I went to Shanghai to play. And so I stayed there for an extra week or something like that. So at his fancy artist in residence hotel, we actually did make music together for the first time. So that was 5-6 years ago. And now this previous autumn, we had like every Thursday, we would meet in my studio and we would record 1 or 2 songs. So we ended up having 10 songs or something like that. And it's going to be on my label. I guess this summer or something like that.
Yes.
We were called Wind and Fire.
Excellent. Only Wind and Fire.
Yeah. And then I have another project with Johan from Familjen.
Oh, yes.
We're called Innerst Inne.
Innerst Inne.
Yeah, deep within in Swedish.
Yes.
And it's also like instrumental, ambient or whatever. And we made a recording, was it 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, in Fårö, in the Gotland island of Sweden. And we would be sitting outdoors with a Buchla and some various, this particular 303.
Yes.
And Johan would be playing keys, and we recorded everything to a 4-track Porta studio. And that album were signed to one of my favorite labels, but they had personal issues and it never got released.
Okay.
So the second album was supposed to be out last year on my label.
Yeah.
But for various reasons, it's still delayed. But I guess it will arrive from the pressing plant March, maybe.
Okay, so sometime later this spring, hopefully people can listen to that as well.
Yeah.
And that's going to be on the Repeatle Bandcamp?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
So, and what else? I'm making music with Sebastian Möllet, and we were supposed to have a week at his house in Skåne in last autumn. We're gonna do a session with Rechord.
Okay,
which didn't end up because of the
travel restrictions.
The one, So I have that one, and I've just started like this month. I've started making music with one of my like super favorite producers of the current electronic scene, but it's too early to mention. But it's going to be focused on this one as well. Yes. So, what else do I have?
Could you maybe tell us a little bit about the TB303 here?
Yeah.
You mentioned you must have played 1,000 gigs with
it.
I
think so. I bought it maybe 20 years ago, and maybe it's hard to see, but it's really been smashed. When I bought it, the 303 wasn't that expensive or rare or hyped as it is nowadays.
Yeah.
So I even wrote my email address in case it would be lost somewhere. Yeah. But I've brought this one to all the Familjen gigs, which I think we had about 500 of them. Every single one of my TM404 shows, or most of my Mokira shows, and all of my Andreas Tilliander shows. So it's got to be about 1,000 gigs with this
particular one.
Yeah, so
that's amazing to have a relationship with an instrument like that.
Yeah, it is. I still remember the first day when I bought it. I would be, and this is no joke, I would be like, I went to bed and I was like, no, I got to go to my living room and just look at it. Yeah. Because it was like, and at the time I didn't even know how to operate it. And maybe for some, I still don't really know how to operate it. And that's the charm with the 303, because it's not like you have a melody and you would just be, programming it. It's the other way around. You're like playing around, random mistakes, and it ends up being something else than you planned, which is like, it's the most fun way to make music, to have a little bits of ideas, what you want to do, but then there's the randomness in it as well, which is, apart from the sound, of course, and the legacy of all the music that I listened to in the 90s.
Exactly.
The randomness is like the main reason why I still enjoy using it.
Yeah, that's probably what keeps it fresh.
I think so. Yeah.
And you also, could you tell us a little bit about which hardware you're enthusiastic about right now? It depends. There's the Analog Rhythm from Electron, a Swedish company as well, from Gothenburg. If I could only use one instrument these days, it would probably be that one, because you got samples, you can make melodies, and obviously drums, since it's rhythm. Yes.
But I've also been enjoying my Buchla a lot.
Yes, indeed.
I've been, selling a lot of other stuff just to be like, focusing on one instrument.
Yeah.
And I've been, doing the Buchla thing for about 4 years, and then I look at my 303s and maybe it's time to do some music with that as well.
Yeah.
Because the SYRA album, as you said before, it's my third TM404 album. The second one was released 5 years ago, so it's been 5 years since my last record, and I blame that on the Buchla actually, because again, it's also one of those instruments that I would go to the studio I would be staying there like Monday to Friday for several months, and I would actually not even record anything. I would just be like, okay, ending up having hours of, IDs, but no recordings. And then at the beginning of the pandemic last February, I actually did decide on record some stuff. So there's about, I don't know, 80 minutes or something on my Bandcamp page, which is...
Yeah, it's called like Sketches of Buchla, or
yeah,
what
something like that. Yeah.
Buchla
case studies or something like that.
Buchla case studies. That's it.
So I guess in this February, I'm gonna do the part 2.
Excellent.
Because it's really like an ongoing study. I still have not that much, knowledge of the Buchla system, so it's kind of interesting to record before you actually know what you're doing. Again, the same with the 303, like happy mistakes. Because, some other synths that I've used since forever, I know exactly how, okay, I want to have this sound. And then it's going to be sounding exactly the way it sounds in my head. But with the Buchla, I'm like, oh, what happens if okay. And a lot of times it sounds like shit, but other times it's like, there is one track particular on that case studies for Buchla. There is one track, I think it's, the name of the tracks are the length of them. So I think the track is called something 15.32 or something like that, which is some of the first recordings I did with the Buchla. And my Buchla has been growing, buying another module.
Could you explain that process a little bit?
The thing is, Buchla is you put together your own system. Same with Surara or Search or whatever. You buy one module. This is like an oscillator. This makes sounds. And you buy a filter, maybe a sequencer, and something that is gonna be playing with the oscillator or affecting how the oscillator operates, various spectral parameters will be adjusted by an LFO or whatever. So it's easy to have like a small setup.
Yes.
But it's even more easy to be like, I have this small setup, but what if I bought another module or another module? And then you buy another case to fit with your modules.
Yes.
And suddenly you're like, oh, there's some empty spaces here. I need to fill it with something. And especially in periods where, from now in the pandemic, you're like, okay, I can't tour, but I really want to be like, on some sort of progress with my like IDs, my so-called career or whatever. And it's something that is really simple to be like, okay, I didn't record any music today, but hey, I bought a new module.
Yes.
That's something for my creative process.
A possibility for a new sound.
Exactly. So it's kind of easy to be like, looking around in the studio, like, oh, I haven't used that tape echo for 5 years. I'm going to put it on eBay or whatever. And then you buy a module. So it's a really ongoing process. But my first recordings were made with like a super simple, small system. And when I listen back to it now, it's like, this sounds so good. I can't imagine how I recorded it. So it's like,
that's it.
So that's like the happy accidents with something that you don't really know how to operate, really. Like so, it's really, really nice to be able to work with synthesizers that you don't really can handle. So so for me currently, Buchla is really that's
kind of a focus for
you.
It
is. But again, the SYRA album was recorded in November. Now it's even, I was supposed to say last year, but it's actually, since this is February, January. So but now it's been almost a year since I recorded the album. So now I've been again doing the Buchla stuff,
Yes.
but now it feels like, I got to return to the 303s and the 202s or whatever. So I guess that's the next step
direction
in.
you're going in.
Yeah.
And one thing that seems to be clear from your whole career basically is also that you like to do collaborations with a lot of different people with different styles.
Yeah.
Is that also for finding these kind of random encounters, or how is that process developed for you?
I think, making music for a living is something that for most people, at least in like the electronic business, is something that you do on your own. Everywhere in Stockholm, there's basements with one person sitting from morning to evening by yourself. And I've done that since forever. Like I've made music as a profession for 20 years. And the first 10 years or so, I didn't really do any collaborations, apart from some remixes or whatever. But now it feels so nice to actually have inputs from someone else. It's nice to be in the same room, of course, or as with Innerst Inne, we would sit, for the first record, we would sit outdoors, which is something that we planned since we were like 15 years old. Like we had the Gotland Ocean. We were sitting in the grass and for a week making music. It's sort of more nice than to be in a Södermalm basement and it's dark and you're sitting there alone. So a collaboration, apart from the music, it's really, really nice to be hanging out with someone.
Yes.
Which means I've mainly been collaborating with close friends, but I've also made music with Brandon Miller, ecologist. He lives in New York, and we've made one album and 2 12 inches together, but we actually never met because he doesn't fly and I haven't been to America for 5, 6, 7 years or so. So we worked together by me doing recordings in the studio, like a lot of loops or whatever, and I would send it to him and he would make them into tracks.
Okay.
And he's a super, super, super fast producer. If you check his discography, he has so many releases. I do as well, but he's like, I don't know, 5 times as fast as me.
Oh my God.
Which means I would be recording something, I don't know, 9 to 5 in the studio. I would send him loops. I would go to the subway and then, 1 hour later, I would check my email and he's like, oh, here's the track. I was, what? Because he's so fast. And I'm always impressed with it. I've never told him no, let's go back and do it again, because I guess we're on the same wavelength. I'm doing the loops. He composes with the loops and adds his own music as well. So that's another way of making music, I guess.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And looking back, you've had so many releases. Yeah. And from your perspective today, if you would recommend some of your earlier stuff to someone who wants to get into your music, what do you personally like?
Yeah. Depends on what is early, but
yes, before today, let's say.
Okay. Yeah. There is one album that I really, really like, which almost nobody noticed for some reason, which I think was out in 2009 or something like that, by my moniker Mokira.
Yes.
It was also on the Kontra-Musik label. I would say it's techno, but there's no percussion. There's no bass drums or whatever. And I really enjoy that album still. It was me in the Årsta studio with several tape echoes and lots of time and just making huge pads and super low basses. And then I would send some recordings to Marcel Detman, like the techno producer. We did a Kontra-Mukira, factory Kontra-Mukira or something like that with Marcel Detman for a 12-inch. And then we put out 3 like a remix series with Echo Space, Deep Chord. Who else? Oh, I forgot now.
One more.
Red Shape was there as well.
Okay.
And I can't remember at the moment. So that album is still very special to me. And I sort of like my first like Rastronauten record, which was out in 2000. Yes.
So I was that Ljud? Or was it one of the other ones?
Yeah, it was called Clip Hop.
Clip
Hop. Ljud is also quite nice, I think. Next month it will be 20 years old. And
excellent.
When I made those recordings, I was 22. I just moved to Stockholm, and I had a one-room apartment and a computer. I'd just been, selling all my synthesizers from the 90s. So at the time, I guess I didn't have I had one synthesizer. So those records are really special for me because I, being quite young and at the time I was still sending demo tapes, actually tapes, you put a cassette in an envelope, or maybe it was a CDR actually, and you send it to Frankfurt, you send it to Berlin or whatever. You wait for a few weeks and you get a phone call, and being 22 years old, and you're like, okay, so now my life is finally starting. So those records are special, not only because of nostalgia, because they're kind of nice still. I mean, I've made music later on that I'm more embarrassed about, stuff I made maybe 15 years ago, which is not really my kind of music these days. But the stuff I made 20 years ago are still, I think they're, you can still listen to them. I think so. And then I had a series of 3 vinyls on my own label in 2007, which was sort of electronic dub music.
Yes.
Which I was really, really at the time I was like, oh, I'm going to do the basic channel thing. Not only production wise, but also, I'm not going to do any interviews. I'm not going to send any promos. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to put out the records and let's see if somebody finds it.
Yeah.
And obviously nobody did. So,
okay.
So I had so many records of that for many, many years. And but if you listen to them now, at least some of the tracks is really sounding like the TM404 stuff.
I see.
So it was really the start of TM404. But at the time, I called myself Andreas Tilliander.
Yes.
But there's at least 3 tracks that are really, it's the same ingredient, the 303s and the tape echoes and some sort of dubby feel. So if you can find those, I would recommend them as well. So.
Excellent. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's about the time we have for today.
Yep.
So I think it was great ending up a little bit with looking back at the past and
Absolutely.
where people can get into your music.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming, Andreas.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And for everyone at home, make sure in the beginning of February to look for the album SYRA, which will be available on the Kontra-Musik Bandcamp and all the other stores that we mentioned. We will also add a link below to pre-order the record for you. So that was it for episode 7. Thank you very much and see you soon again.